Hail, happy heathens, strangers, travelers, kinsmen, and friends, welcome. Thank you for tuning in to Hammer and Hearth. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about, is there a place for clergy within the practice of modern heathenry? Among the various discussion boards, forums, chat groups, Facebook pages, there's a almost heated debate about whether or not modern heathens even need clergy. Of course, as with any discussion, there are people who fall interminglingly within the middle. And while the middle ground is far often the more common ground, we're going to take a look at the ends of the spectrum. Those who are, no, we don't need no clergy within our faith, and those on the other side who say, not a bad idea. The folks who are opposed to clergy within modern heathenry have a couple of reasons for their stance. There is a strong belief within this particular group of folks that having clergy within heathenry means that we've decided that we want to be like the Christians. How dare we? Their argument stands that the Abrahamic faith, specifically Christianity, is what wiped heathenry off the face of the map for a couple thousand years. Why then should we want to model ourselves after our enemy? I don't feel that Christianity is our enemy. Sure, we have some opposing viewpoints. Sure, that's a discussion for a different day. Point of the matter is, the anti-clergy within heathenry, one of their big arguments is don't model yourself like the people that wiped us out. Another argument that I've heard mentioned quite frequently, and I'm not sure where this sentiment comes from, but is that heathenry isn't a religion, that we don't have a sacred book, that we don't have a holy text, that we don't have religious doctrine and all the trappings that go with what these people associate with religion, that heathenry is a glorified, according to them, heathenry is a glorified spiritual practice founded in ancestor worship. If there's going to be a reason for us to be even having these discussions, then I think it's safe to say that heathenry is a religion. Do we have a dogmatic set of commandments of this is what you shall and shall not do to be a heathen? Not specifically. We have the Eddas. We know that they're what we have written was written predominantly by a Christian monk long after the general populace stopped following these traditions, stopped admitting to believing in these myths and these lores and these sagas. Fast forward to modern times, we are a modern reconstruction of that faith based on the books, the sagas, the lore that we have, the archaeological finds. Heathenry has established itself, whether an individual wants to believe it's a religion or not. Heathenry has set itself to be a religion. The third most common argument that I've seen amongst the forums is that the ancient Norse did not have clergy, didn't have a priest structure, didn't have a priest caste, didn't have a dominated hierarchical tier of responsibilities of anyone having claim to the direct line to the gods. However, we do know that the sagas, as well as archaeological finds, have shown that there were priests at the Temple of Uppsala. Individual villages, individual farmsteads, they may not have had a priest. It may have been just the family, the head of the household, leading observances, leading blot and simbel and other forms of worship to the gods. We know from the sagas, from the Edda, that there were holy people, wise people, seers, seeresses, witches, that would come to the village to provide some sort of religious connection, some sort of religious insight that the village may not have had. We know that people would travel from their villages and make a pilgrimage to Uppsala at various points and for larger ceremonies and whatnot. And when they arrived there, the livestock that they brought to offer up as sacrifices, those meats were given to the priests there for the upkeep of the temple, for the rites that they provided. So we know that our ancestors did, in fact, have priests. May not have been widespread, may not have made claim to be the only source of divine knowledge, may not have even claimed to be the only ones who could talk to the gods. But something about them set them apart from the rest of the society. All that being said, though, we cannot for one instance forget the fact, as I've said in previous videos, we are not them. We are living in the 21st century with modern technology where I can communicate to you wherever you are, clear on the other side of the world, days after I post this video, months, years, whatever, after I post this video, you will still be able to click on it, listen to it, and glean your own insight from it. Alice Karlsdottir says in the preface of her book, Norse Goddess Magic, she says, a living, vital religion must continue to grow and develop and not remain a carbon copy of the past. Part of me wonders if one of the reasons why people are opposed to clergy in heathenry is the terminology. As I've just mentioned, we are living in the 21st century. That is a fact. Can't deny that, can't argue it. It's just where we are. In the past 2,000 years of what we call the Common Era, that timeline has been, in the Western Hemisphere at the very least, has been dominated and influenced from the very get-go by Christianity, by the Abrahamic faiths. If we didn't have Judaism, we wouldn't have had Christianity, so on and so forth. But Christianity being the big player in the scene. So maybe it's the terminology. For example, clergy. The word clergy has a long history coming to us, most recently through Middle English, where the word clergy was spelt with a G-I-E as opposed to the G-Y that we now use. Coming from there, from the Old French, where the word was spelt the same but with an accent over the E. And in that time, in that usage, the word simply meant learned men. If we follow the word back through its history, all the way back to ancient Greek, we see that it comes from the word klerikos, which meant of the clergy. That's not really helpful for defining. So let's fast forward back a little through, track it back through history, come more recently. The Latin for clericus simply meant one ordained for religious services. Okay, so there's one word that people tend to raise their hackles against. So we don't want to call them clergy, okay? Well, how about we call them a minister? Heathen minister. The word minister, as we know it, comes to us through Old French. I'm not even going to try and butcher it. I don't speak French. I'm sorry. But the French word meant a servant or administrator. If we track it further back to its Romance roots, we see that it came to us from Latin. Minister was from the root minus, from the same root as minus. Minister meant an inferior or a servant or the priest's assistant. Ooh, okay, I can hear people gritting their teeth at using minister for heathenry. Okay. How about pastor? Sure, let's call him a heathen pastor. Ooh, but wait. Pastor comes to us from pastoral, meaning shepherds. Christians tend to refer to themselves as a flock. Their religious leader, their pastor, being a shepherd, tending to his flock. The analogy there referencing to Christ being referred to as the Lamb of God, and thus indicating in some form or fashion that the congregation is little more than sheep, members of the flock that need to be tended by the shepherd. Certainly something heathens are not too keen on willing to be compared to. I've seen numerous memes that say something to the effect of, why be a lamb of God when you can be a wolf of Odin? Okay, so, let's not use pastor. That brings up too many ill feelings among those who have whatever gripes against Christianity. About priest. Heathen priest. Wiccans use priest and priestess. Priest coming to us from the Old English praeost. Further back from the Old High German priest. Stepping even further back from the Vulgar Latin prevost. Here we're getting closer to the root of the word that we know and use as priest, coming from Latin prepositus, person placed in charge. Most heathens, both sides of the debate, whether they're for or against a religious leader of some sort, are very strong-willed. Let's be honest. You will not find a person, a meek person within the heathen community. They're going to be strong-willed about something, especially when it comes to the faith. Clearly, not one of them wants to be thought of as being a servant of someone or having to be led about the field like a herd animal. There are numerous memes and statements and thought processes about the gods do not demand of us to kneel before them in subservient supplication, but rather to stand strongly and proudly beside them. So minister isn't going to work either for most folks. Even the word clergy, as we've seen, taking it all the way back, does not necessarily have to refer to any one specific faith, because we have spent the past 2,000 years associating the word clergy with the Christian leadership. Again, there's a lot of pushback to using that word. So let's take a look at our ancient ancestors. They used a word, godi. In more recent times, and I'm still talking pre-Snorri Sturluson, but in more recent times, the word Gothi was used to refer to a chieftain or a wealthy person of importance and leadership. However, we know from runestones and from sagas and from other sources that it was once used to denote a holy person. Without fear of becoming a stagnant carbon copy of our past, I feel that this is a safe word for us to use going forward, that we should adopt it into our hearts and restore it to its place among the spiritual. As I said before, obviously our ancestors did have religious guides. I know some of you out there are still going, I'm a strong, proud heathen. I don't need no religious man telling me what to think or believe. While there is an ever-increasing number of individuals who have been heathen, or at least pagan, for more than a decade now, there is an equal number, if not potentially larger number, of people who are just picking up the runes, who are just tuning in to this channel, who prior to today have either been of no faith whatsoever or have followed a very specific faith path that had absolutely nothing to do with heathenry. I'm reminded of my first whitewater rafting trip, or even my sister's first skydiving adventure. Now, either one of us, being intelligent individuals, could have gone to the library, studied all of the books on the subject, gone down to our local adventure gear store, bought all the equipment we needed, and headed off on our own without any assistance. We could have done that. We may even have been very successful. However, instead, we sought out a guide. Someone who was knowledgeable in the adventure, who had experience, and would be able to provide us with the best experience while also leading us safely through or around or avoiding altogether any of the dangers and pitfalls that could have made for a bad experience, could have been life-threatening. Now, most people's spiritual journey isn't going to have any literal life-threatening stumbling stones. But every path has roots and rocks along the way that you might trip upon. And if you trip hard enough, you'll say, screw it, go back the other way, and never continue down the path. I'm going to reference Alice Karlsdottir again. She says, sometimes you just need someone who will honestly tell you when you've gone off track. So, whether you're a solitary practitioner or a member of a large kindred or hearth, regardless of whether you've been a heathen for 20 years or if this is your first day starting down the path, it never hurts to have someone who you can turn to, who you can trust for guidance, advice, insight. Heathenry is often referred to as the religion with homework. No one ever said we couldn't have a tutor or a teacher along the way. Food for thought. Till next we meet again, may the gods smile favorably upon you and yours. Skull.